It's time to talk about the old gods, titans, and you. I've covered a few creatures that have player options in the past on this channel, and today we're talking about a player race that is something truly special. The folks over at Roll for Combat sent me an exclusive preview of their new player race book, Battle Zoo Ancestry's Year of the Titans, which is currently on Kickstarter. Just in time for the holidays, am I right, fellas? It's a really neat take on book production because the way they're rolling out content basically ensures you're getting cool stuff all year. Everyone who purchases the book will get a full fleshed out player species option once per month throughout all of 2025, complete with unique feats, backgrounds, subspecies, some amazing artwork, and plenty of juicy lore. So if you do decide to pick it up for that special someone over the holidays, they'll be thinking about you all year long. All the stuff within is also compatible with D&D 5th edition, D&D 2024, and Pathfinder. You don't just get a player option though, you also get digital battle maps themed around each ancestry, tokens that are both static and animated, as well as that sweet path builder file for the Pathfinder players in the room. In January, trolls are the species of the month, but anyone who backs the Kickstarter will also be getting access to the Titan species as a thank you bonus. And as someone who's intrigued by the idea of playing as a Titan, I was very curious to know what that even means. So they sent me over a preview copy of what they've been cooking up, and today, we're gonna talk about it. So whether you're a player looking for a brand new type of creature to play as, or a DM looking to fill out some world lore, buckle up. According to the lore of the Titan species, they are descended from a caste of mythical godlike beings that once ruled the earth in an age long since past. These primordial titans were essentially kaiju, colossal monsters, each one unique and terrifying in their own way, possessing physical power on a scale that's nearly unthinkable. But of course, because the material plane's not allowed to have cool things actually, the gods intervene and killed all of the titans, for the most part. As beings of such tremendous power, while their bodies were turned to dust, their essence lingered on. This would manifest in several ways, affecting the environment and world itself in locations where the great beasts were felled. However, once in a while, that essence would bond to a mortal soul, and a titan is born. Sometimes these titans are born to a set of mortal parents in a manner similar to how a tiefling or a genasi might be born to a pair of more typical creatures, because one of them had a fiend or an elemental somewhere in their bloodline. Other times, it's more of an immaculate conception kind of vibe, where the origins of this weird monster baby are truly unknown, at least to the parent. And very rarely, this lingering titanic essence will simply manifest spontaneously in the wild as a living creature, meaning that this newly born titan has no true parents or family. But whatever their origin story, every titan is a unique creature, often sharing traits with the ancestry of the beast that spawned them. They could appear as a living tree, seeming to have simply grown straight from the soil, or they might look like a horrible crab person. But whatever the case, they're often much larger than your average humanoid creature, and their lineage is somewhat obvious in terms of their appearance. Upon their birth, every titan is gifted with a spark, a lingering node of power that informs their origin. It may manifest as a scaled body that is more resilient to damage, blood that crackles with elemental energy, or a tendency for wounds to heal rapidly. There are many ways it can manifest, but whatever the spark is, should the titan choose to nurture and explore that power within them, they are capable of attaining heights of power most mortals can only dream of. And while titans are exceptionally rare, there are enough of them that they've formed these loose classifications, which are more akin to schools of thought and philosophical outlooks than actual societies. These general philosophies are called clashes, and when two titans of opposing clashes meet up, they tend to clash. But whichever clash a titan may belong to, generally speaking, they tend to be extremely self-motivated and often use their powers to shape the world around them for better or for worse. So, how might it look to actually play a member of this species? I mean, there are obviously a lot of different ways that this could pan out, but in the trailer put up by Roll for Combat on their Kickstarter, there's a single line that I couldn't stop thinking about.
That's 13 unique species throughout 2025 to amaze your friends and family. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to call my dungeon master and tell them that I'm going to be playing as Godzilla from now on.
I love Godzilla. I make references to him on this channel all the time, and I was intrigued by the idea of playing a character inspired by the OG kaiju himself. So using these rules, I tried to make that character, and the results were certainly something. There are so many different ways to build a Titan PC, and honestly, there are multiple ways you could even build a Godzilla-inspired PC using these rules. But I came up with a build that I think is both on theme, super fun, and a little bit cracked if I'm being honest. First and foremost, we needed a name, and thus Carl Bigman was born. I just used point buy for stats, and for reasons that will become clear as we progress, ended up with one of the goofiest stat arrays of all time, obviously prioritizing strength and constitution, with a little bump in charisma for that intimidation factor. As a Titan, your type is humanoid, and your size can be either medium or large, so obviously we're going to be a big guy, and going with large here is the move. Now, instead of an additional species bonus that you might see on many of the other races that we have access to, we get to choose what the essence of our Titan spark is, the thing that connects us back to that ancient beast. Each spark option has 5 tiers to it that you can unlock with feats as you level up, which is cool, but at level 1 you can either take the first tier ability in 2 different sparks, or the first 2 tiers of a single spark. I opted to go with 2 tiers in the Razor spark, which at tier 1 gives you an unarmed strike that deals your choice of bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage and hits for a d6. And at tier 2 you gain another unarmed strike with another damage type of your choosing, and both of your attacks also gain a weapon mastery property. So I ended up with a bite and tail attack, opting to give my bite cleave so that I can get an extra attack in when I hit with it, and my tail push in case I need to knock someone away from me. More on this in a minute. For my background, I opted to go with one of the clashes that Titans have access to, and you know I had to go with the Rampagers. I mean, come on, what does Godzilla do if not rampage? Rampagers typically arise from the world and learn to survive by taking what they need and smashing those in their way, but more on that in a minute. This choice did net us athletics and intimidation proficiency, as well as 50 gold pieces, because I shan't be taking any equipment on this man, but I will take some money. For my origin feat as a Titan, I was able to choose one of the level 1 Titan feats, so I opted for Awakened Spark from Dreaming Depth, which allows you to take the tier 1 spark option of a spark you don't already have. I chose to take the first tier in the Aegis spark, which sets your armor class to 17 if it would otherwise be lower. And this is why I was able to get away with a dexterity score of 10, because Godzilla is not necessarily the most dexterous guy around, and with our armor class set to 17 because of all the heavy plates and spikes covering our body, we don't need it for armor class either. Now, after all of that initial setup, I had to pick a class. Barbarian is the obvious choice here because of course I want to be able to go into a rage and stomp around the city, so that's what I did, taking Barbarian from level 1 to 5. This gives us Rage, which is very on brand, along with Danger Sense, which will help us overcome that abysmal +0 on dex saves. We also get Primal Knowledge, so we can use our massive strength score instead of some other stupid stat on any of the Barbarian skill checks when we're raging, and of course that second attack, as well as another feat. And this next part's really important because there is something missing from going straight Barbarian on a Titan character like this if we're trying to emulate Godzilla, and that of course is his most iconic weapon, the atomic breath. There are a few different ways we could make this work, but I chose to go with the level 4 Titan feat, Cloak and Guise of Mortal Flesh. This feat is representative of how you, while still a Titan, have a strong connection to your parents, allowing you to gain all of the species bonuses of another species option aside from any ability score increases. And this is where I decided that Carl's parents were Blue Dragonborn. This gives us dark vision, lightning resistance, and most importantly, that sweet, sweet lightning breath attack. At level 5 you also get Draconic Flight, which isn't super thematic for our Godzilla build, but hey, being able to fly for 10 minutes per day doesn't suck. For my subclass I chose Berserker of course, just absolutely cranking up that rage damage, and this means that we can now bite someone for 1d6 plus strength, and then make another attack against someone with our bite because of the cleave, and if we're raging, we add another 2d6 to the first attack and a flat +2 bonus to both attacks. And then we come in with that tail swipe and knock them 10 feet away, or just bite them again. Truly whatever you feel. Throw in a spicy lightning breath from time to time, and you're hot to try. And while this is all well and fine for our first leading into second tier campaign, I couldn't help but think about how I might continue to progress this character if I was gonna go a few more levels. See, I had this idea that I couldn't stop thinking about in terms of a character build, so we're gonna bump Carl up to level 10 and see what the King of Monsters can really do. Instead of going straight Barbarian all the way, we're actually gonna drop a level of Barbarian and stop at 4th. This will lose us our second attack and fast movement, but we're about to get that attack back, and fast movement doesn't really feel like a Godzilla thing anyways. He's not exactly known for being speedy. He's more of a lumber menacingly towards you and smash everything in his way kind of guy. So with 6 levels now freed up, we're gonna pour all of them into Fighter, and that gets us a ton of really useful abilities. We get that second attack back, but we also get Action Surge, Tactical Mind, Tactical Shift, and Second Wind, all of which are gonna make us a lot harder to kill. Action Surge specifically is monstrous on a character like this, but More on that in a minute. The main reason we want 6 levels in Fighter is because that gets us 2 additional feats and a fighting style feat. I wanted the unarmed fighting style because that bumps the damage of all our unarmed strikes up to 1d8, and if we're grappling someone at the start of the turn, that person just takes 1d4 damage. For our 4th level fighter feat, we're going to take Grappler, because then, once per turn when we hit with an unarmed strike, we can also initiate a grapple as part of the attack. We also get free advantage on targets we're grappling, and you don't have to spend additional movement to drag a grappled creature around. Then for our level 6 fighter feat, we're going to take another Titan feat called Emerge from Civilization's Chrysalis. This allows us to use an action to become huge and monstrous in appearance. The transformation lasts 10 minutes, gives us a 10-foot reach, grants +2 on damage rolls, and gives us advantage on intimidation checks. So if we do that while raging, as a barbarian, we can use our strength instead of charisma when making an intimidation check, giving us a massive modifier, and we have advantage. So that's pretty cool. But the real icing on the cake here is that we take the champion fighter subclass, which means we now score a critical hit on a 19 or 20 and have advantage on initiative as well as athletics even when we're not raging. And when we do score a critical hit, we can move up to half our speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. Now this, my friends, is a true Godzilla build, and we're only level 10. We haven't gotten into like the crazy build territory of level 15 plus. This is super viable. This is very likely something you could do in a campaign. When Carl Bigman's turn comes around in initiative, he's gonna be raging, and that means he gets to make a bite attack at advantage because of course we're gonna be reckless. And if that attack hits, we're gonna deal 1d8 plus 2d6 plus 2 plus strength damage, which is an average of 17 on a single strike. As part of the attack, we get to cleave and hit another target for 1d8 plus 2 damage, and on either of those hits, we can grab our opponent because of the grappler feat. And from here, we can do a few very interesting things. We can simply hang on to our enemy and attack them for some more direct damage, which if they don't break free of our grapple before the next turn is going to result in even more incidental damage to them because of our fighting style. Thematically, I especially like following this up with a lightning breath to, you know, melt the face of someone stuck in our jaws along with anyone else who happens to be in a straight line away from us. Or, depending on where you are, we can move without being slowed down because of the grappler feat, dragging the creature in our mouth and then hit them with our tail, essentially smashing them like a baseball in a batting cage, sending the target flying 10 feet away from us because of our tail's push property. Not only does that hit for an additional 1d8 plus 2 plus strength, but also potentially throwing that target into a hazard like a spike trap or something that's on fire or off a cliff or whatever happens to be around. Get creative. Use the environment to your advantage. And speaking of advantage, also keep in mind, because pretty much every attack we make is gonna be at advantage, we can just force that by recklessly attacking if we need to, we're gonna be so much more likely to land critical hits because of Champion Fighter giving us the ability to crit on a 19 or a 20. That's great for damage, but every time we land a crit, we also get to move up to half our speed, and because of Grappler, if we hit someone with a crit and grapple them as part of the same attack, we can drag them with us during that movement. All of that paired up with the fighter's utility options, action surge if you're feeling spicy, and the rage's damage resistance as well as a 17 AC, we are truly out here just smashing everything in our path. And that's awesome. Also, none of that is even considering the fact that we can become huge in order to extend our reach and up our damage per hit a little bit for 10 minutes every day, going full Godzilla mode. Now, like I said, there are tons of different ways you could use this book to build a Godzilla themed character or even a Mothra themed character. But this is what I came up with, and I'm stoked. I don't know if this is the most optimal thing in the world, but it sounds very fun to me. But setting mechanics aside for a moment, let's talk about how you as a DM might incorporate this species into your game world to enrich the world lore of your setting. As beings with this spark of power within them from the day of their birth, I can't help but think of sorcerers and how they often receive their magic in a similar fashion. Sorcerers tend to draw on a well of power from within themselves, and I think that makes them a natural pairing with the Titan species. The reason I bring this up is because not only could that be a fun PC to build out, but also I think a Titanic sorcerer would make for a really cool NPC. I think this is also true somewhat for druids as a class with intense connections to the land. Perhaps they're a Titan formed from the essence of an ancient creature that once guarded the land as well. In terms of general world building stuff though, introducing a species like this into your campaign is really intriguing to me. How might others view them? Are they feared? worshipped? Reviled? Is the existence of titans well known enough that maybe expecting parents pray to the gods that their child is not born with scales or squid tentacles? Or conversely, is it seen as a gift? Maybe the opposite is true and parents hope for a child blessed by the ancient beasts of old. In any fleshed out world, the outlook on titans is bound to vary from place to place, of course, but I think figuring out how they fit in with your setting, or even a more conventional setting like the Forgotten Realms, can be really fun. Also, as creatures descendant from the enemies of the gods, it's very likely that the titans are despised by the entire pantheon, good, evil, and everything in between. How might the titans of your world react to that? Do they want to wreak vengeance on the gods for this ancient grudge that flows through their veins? Or perhaps they choose to try and prove themselves worthy to the gods and instead take the high road, seeking to go above and beyond and act as stewards of the material plane. Or maybe they just don't give a damn. Whatever the case, I think that specific interaction says a lot about how Titans would fit into any game world. And I also think it could make them really compelling villains. I mean, if you want to make a villainous Titan NPC, you could just go through the feats and player options and pick the things you think are most exciting or thematic, assign them to a stat block, and away you go. I mean, take our boy Carl Bigman here, for instance. Imagine this guy leading a warrior band of lizard folk barbarians up in the mountains. If he comes to town, you've got this huge, literally, man just smashing down the gates and unleashing his horde of warriors. That sounds like a pretty cool antagonist. Man, I don't want to just play as Godzilla, I want to make my players fight Godzilla. But whatever you choose to do with this new species, I think they have a ton of potential as both a player option and a tool for the DM to use, and I love to see that in a playable creature. If you want to get your hands on the Titan Ancestry, as well as a dozen other cool and creative player options, just follow the link in the description down below and head on over to the Kickstarter page to check it out for yourself. And if you want to unleash Carl Bigman specifically, I will link to his stats in the description down below. If you do decide to actually use him, A, definitely let me know. B, feel free to change his name to something more compelling, or just meme on your players. I'm not your supervisor. You're allowed. But in any case, thank you so much to Roll for Combat for bringing us here this week to talk about some of the cool new stuff they've been cooking up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments which kaiju or other kaiju adjacent ancient monster you plan on using as inspiration for your own Titan PC. I feel like there's so much potential here for really interesting builds. I just want to make all of the kaijus into like 10th level characters and force them to fight each other. Really settle the Godzilla versus King Kong debate once and for all. Godzilla would win. That's just true. Anyways, see you next time.